Introduction. As little as 3 months ago, I was looking at my subscriber count and thinking it was highly unlikely I would reach 5,000 subscribers by the end of the year. However, around the start of December, my views and subscriber count started to spike quite dramatically, and I picked up nearly 1,000 subscribers just in that month. Soon I realized I was going to hit 5,000 subscribers before the end of Christmas, let alone before the end of the year. Events quite overtook me, so now I'm producing this video rather late, by which point I have 5,253 subscribers. I'd like to thank you all for your support. I do not monetize my videos, partly because I have strong objections to YouTube's exploitative practices, and partly because I want my content to be as free from hindrance and distraction as possible. I want your viewing experience to be informative, enjoyable, and uninterrupted by corporate shilling. However, unfortunately, you'll occasionally see an ad on one of my videos because YouTube reserves the right to use them for this purpose even though they are not monetized. YouTube will also do this if I use media from another company, such as a news service, so they can generate some revenue for the company which owns the media. However, I do not receive any ad revenue from my channel at all. If you feel motivated to support me, see my Patreon link in the video description. Please don't become a patron unless you're financially stable with an appropriate disposable income. Liking, sharing, and subscribing is actually worth more to me. In this video, I'll be answering a number of questions which have been put to me by commenters, subscribers, patrons, and members of my Discord server, and I'll also be describing future plans I have for this channel. See the timestamps in the video description to navigate the content. Answering your questions. Question 1. What kind of anarchist are you? Answer. I'm a Christian anarcho-mutualist. If you want to know more about anarcho-mutualism, I have a video on that. See the link in the video description. Question 2. When did you become an anarchist? Answer. I was raised by Christian anarchist parents. My father was for some time a member of the Australian Communist Party, which resulted in his discharge from the Australian Navy after investigation by the Australian Security Intelligence Organisation. I was raised with leftist literature on the family bookshelf, including the writings of Hegel, Engels, Marx, and Lenin. In high school, instead of doing my final social science assignment on the organisation of the Australian government, like every other student in my class, I did mine on the Russian Revolution of 1917 and its aftermath. Question 3. Where are you based? Answer. This is more general and courteous than the very direct and specific question, where do you live? But I'll answer the latter question anyway. Instead of just saying I'm based in Asia, I'm happy saying I live in Taiwan, which is an independent nation and is not China nor part of China. Question 4. Do you have any academic credentials relevant to your videos? Answer. I have some academic qualifications relevant to some of my videos. My undergraduate degree was a Bachelor of Arts with a double major in classics, meaning I studied Greek and Roman art, architecture, literature, history, and language, including Greek and Latin. This has given me a fairly good, broad understanding of ancient Greek and Roman history from the archaic era to the early medieval period. I also studied English literature from Chaucer to the 19th century, English history from the War of Roses to the end of the 17th century, and most importantly, I studied a year-long history unit on nationalism, imperialism, and revolution, covering New Zealand, Canada, Kenya, South Africa, Ireland, and India, drawing on primary sources and secondary commentary. This course was quite ahead of its time, introducing me to post-colonial studies very early in my academic life, at a time when the field itself was still developing. I also have a master's degree in information management and systems, an area of study which came naturally to me since I have an orderly mind which seeks to systematize and organize information. I also worked as a university research assistant for a couple of years. This year, I'm starting a part-time lecturing position at a local university, teaching photography in a journalism and mass communication program. Question 5. Do you ever feel in conflict between producing the type of content that gets rewarded with views and producing the type of content that reflects your principles and genuine interests? Answer. That's a great question and highly relevant to my channel. It should be fairly clear from my low number of subscribers that my videos don't prioritize views over what I consider to be quality content. I would like more views, more subscribers, and more patrons, but I have a personal goal for my channel, and I prioritize that goal above all else, and I believe my content reflects that. I don't feel torn between the desire for views and the desire to maintain my principles. There's a lot of content I could make which would probably result in more views, but which I avoid for a range of reasons. Firstly, I avoid low-hanging fruit. That includes PragerU videos, which I consider so intellectually impoverished they're simply not worth bothering with. The topics they raise are often relevant to my aims, but addressing those topics effectively doesn't require any reference to PragerU. I don't have a personal objection to other people debunking PragerU videos, and I believe those can be very useful. I just don't think that debunking PragerU is a good use of my time. Secondly, I aim to be diverse in my content. A great deal of YouTube leftist content is focused very directly on America and is largely irrelevant to people living elsewhere. I think there's a massive oversaturation of America-centric leftist content on YouTube, which is one of the reasons why I aim to provide a more diverse range of perspectives, in particular highlighting topics and viewpoints outside the Anglosphere. Thirdly, I deliberately avoid making culture war and debate bro videos. I can acknowledge both of these genres have their function, but I believe there's an awful lot of this content online already, most of it not particularly high in quality, and it's another space I think is oversaturated and, frankly, overvalued. While I could try my hand at producing higher quality content in these genres, I feel it would dilute my channel and move it off target. Fourthly, I avoid trend chasing, clout chasing, and drama. Apart from my personal distaste for this kind of content, there's a huge amount of it in the online left already, and I don't see the need to add to it. Again, that kind of content would dilute my channel. It's just not what I'm here for. So now I'll talk about the type of content I aim to produce, which I believe differentiates my channel from other leftist channels. Firstly, I deliberately make space for theory. I'm not a hardcore theory channel by any means. In fact, only a small proportion of my content is pure theory, but I do aim to make anarchist theory accessible to people through my Anarchism 101 series. Additionally, my Learning About the Left series and Fight the Right series, constituting about a third of my entire channel content, analyze topics from an explicitly leftist perspective and explain how leftist theory applies practically to real life. I think that's particularly important. Secondly, I create a lot of historical content comprising at least half of my videos, again interpreting history from a leftist perspective, which I think is missing on YouTube. History is a huge genre on the platform, but many history channels are either liberal or centrist at best, with a few being distinctively center-right, and they generally aim to avoid making political comment. While I take care to present facts accurately and objectively, my interpretation of history is explicitly leftist, and I think that's a useful way to expose people to leftist thought. I don't think there's enough leftist historical analysis on YouTube, and I aim to address that. I also think it's important to address certain historical topics which are typically misunderstood and which are easily harnessed by the right for their purposes. It's also important for leftists to be seen correcting misunderstandings of history, since we're often accused of misinterpreting it for our own ends. Some misinterpretations of history are motivated by right-wing concerns, but others are undoubtedly motivated by progressive or left-wing concerns, and I aim to debunk both. I think it's important for people to see a leftist treating history with intellectual honesty. For example, on the left, we do have a tendency to treat indigenous histories as pure sources of indisputable fact, whereas they're often a lot more complicated than that. A great deal of formally recorded indigenous historical narrative is actually very recent, having been created in collision with, or even shortly after, settler colonization, and it's inevitably shaped by that. Consequently, it can't be relied on as necessarily accurate. Indigenous histories will change over time to suit the needs of the communities which produce them, and often follow social and political trends in the broader settler colonial society. We need to realize that marginalized groups and indigenous people can be wrong. Colonized people can and do invent all kinds of useful myths in the process of their decolonization, particularly in the service of their own nation building. Treating such groups as incontrovertible, holy truth-sayers is just totally unrealistic. It irritates me when leftists aren't critical about history because they want to own the right, or own the libs, or just support minorities. Fake history isn't helpful to long-term leftist goals, and leftists need to be sensitive to the fact that non-white governments are just as susceptible to abusing history as white governments. Thirdly, I create content on topics less commonly addressed by leftists, in particular providing critical anarchist perspectives on nations which have had, or still have, socialist, or at least self-described socialist, governments. So far, I've covered Vietnam, China, and Poland in about half a dozen videos. As a Christian anarchist, I have no personal allegiance to any nation, and on my YouTube channel I have at least half a dozen videos exposing crimes of imperialism and colonialism, as well as debunking myths by European colonizers which were used to justify their land theft. I don't care about national reputations suffering from historical facts. What I care about is historical facts. Question 6. How do you feel being an anarchist among a capitalist and hierarchical society? Can you make your social life cohere with your ideology, or do you have to keep them strictly separated in order to not appear strange or extremist? Answer. Here in Taiwan, I manage being an anarchist pretty well. Over the last 17 years, I've found plenty of opportunities for volunteer work at various charities and social welfare organizations, such as orphanages, halfway homes, and HIV shelters, which I consider to be an essential social contribution from both a Christian and an anarchist perspective. I've also spent 8 years doing volunteer work in indigenous communities, providing me with insights into their concerns and challenges. As an independent contract worker, I am fortunate to be in the position of choosing who I work for, and I'm very largely in control of my own economic life. In my role as an independent teacher, I'm in the position of typically being able to write my own curriculum material, run my classes as I see fit, and introduce my students to a wide range of leftist and progressive topics such as settler colonization, nationalism, imperialism, anti-capitalism, anarchism, socialism, anti-racism, decolonization, and post-colonial studies. I find my literary analysis classes particularly useful in this regard. As an anarchist and a former student at a Montessori school, see the link in the video description, I also adhere to a teaching methodology which is cooperative, collaborative, and non-hierarchical, which I find my students respond to very well. So overall, yes, I generally find myself able to live within my anarchist principles and pursue anarchist praxis regardless of the fact that I live in a capitalist and hierarchical society. Question 7. Do you think globalization of today's scale is inherently unjust, hierarchical, and exploitative? Or could globalization of today's scale practically exist in an anarchist world? Answer. I don't believe globalization is itself necessarily inherently unjust, hierarchical, and exploitative. However, I do think that abandoning the current form of globalization and adopting an egalitarian form would probably require nothing short of global anarchism, socialism, or communism. At present, I think the best we can hope for realistically is just a mitigation of capitalist globalism's harm. Question 8. What software do you use to produce your videos? Answer. I originally used Adobe Premiere since that's what I was most familiar with as an amateur photographer and videographer, but shortly afterwards I moved to After Effects since it was so obviously far more suited to the purpose. I've now become quite competent with After Effects and purchased a host of plugins for it which help automate my production process tremendously. In fact, these days it's my research, script writing, and audio recording which takes the greatest amount of time, while my actual video production takes comparatively little. Question 9. Can you show your desktop? Answer. Okay, here's a brief video of my desktop. I have three 32-inch monitors, an ergonomic mouse with an OLED display, and a set of half a dozen buttons, several of which I have programmed with productivity macros. I have a freestyle RGB split keyboard, also programmed with various productivity macros. I have a Stream Deck XL with 32 buttons, each with its own OLED display, again programmed with additional productivity macros, and frankly, I highly recommend this device. And I also have a toolbox programmed with productivity macros specifically for Adobe applications. I love my toolbox. I bought it when they launched their Kickstarter campaign, and I should mention, even though I have no personal reason for doing so because I'm not being sponsored for this, they're currently running a second Kickstarter campaign with their upgraded wireless model, and I strongly recommend you check it out. I've already pledged for it. Meanwhile, my recording equipment consists of a condenser microphone on a spring-loaded swivel boom. It's a Superlux H08 and a Manocaster sound mixer shown on screen now. See the link in the video description for details. Question 10. Is that armor you're wearing just for show, or do you actually use it? And a related question, are you a LARPer, or do you do SCA? Answer. The armor is steel, and it is designed for actual use. I don't do LARP or SCA. I'm a practitioner of HEMA, Historical European Martial Arts. I'm a member of a club here in Taiwan. In HEMA, we study historical martial treatises written by masters of the medieval and Renaissance periods and use blunted steel, accurate recreations of historical weapons, typically swords, but also daggers, spears, and polearms. Unlike LARP and SCA, our aim is to recreate accurately and faithfully the arms, armor, and art of the historical European martial tradition, learning to use historical European weapons the way they were originally used in combat. My armor kit isn't actually complete yet, and I'm gradually building it up. Once it is complete, I'll be able to fight in it properly. I'll make a video about it one day. Meanwhile, you can see the video description for a link to my club's YouTube channel. Question 11. Which languages are you fluent with? Answer. I guess this question is prompted by my pronunciation of non-English words and my occasional use of some non-English languages in my videos, especially my use of Chinese, which a few people have commented on. I've had a few people tell me they appreciate the effort I make to pronounce non-English words correctly, especially personal and place names, and I'm grateful for that because I really do try my best to identify the correct pronunciation and practice these words until I can say them with a reasonable degree of accuracy. I think that's important, a matter of common courtesy if nothing else. I do sympathize with creators who aren't good with languages and who offer the standard apology of, I'm sorry I probably butchered that, which I think is totally fine since it shows respect. As for actual fluency with languages, I did study classical Greek and Latin at college, but that was many years ago. I can still find my way around a Greek or Latin lexicon and some Greek texts, but my Latin was never really strong at all, even at the best of times, so I'm basically limited to using a lexicon and reading some basic classical texts or biblical texts. On the other hand, medieval Latin, especially ecclesiastical Latin, is absolutely all over the place with abbreviations, special terms, and unusual vocabulary and grammar, so I'm not at all competent with that. However, I did find I could read a surprising amount of the Magna Carta when I saw one of the original manuscripts at Lincoln Cathedral. I also learned Japanese for a couple of years in senior high and 1 year at college, and I still remember quite a lot of the hiragana and katakana, along with a lot of kanji, some vocabulary, and some basic grammar, but in terms of fluency, I'm barely at conversational level now. However, I do have intermediate fluency in spoken Chinese, and my writing is passable, though my reading is painfully slow. I also have basic conversational fluency in Atayal, one of the Aboriginal languages in Taiwan. Going back to my Chinese, I know some people find my pronunciation a bit curious, and one person has asked if I'm speaking the Minnan dialect, and that was actually a pretty good guess. The Mandarin Chinese I speak is called here in Taiwan Guoyu, or national language, which is strongly influenced by Minnanyu, the Minnan dialect, so the pronunciation is distinctly different from Putonghua, the common Mandarin spoken in China. Whenever I do visit China, I find people can always understand me easily enough, but they often comment on my accent, saying it sounds like Minyu, that is Minnan dialect, or else they just say it sounds Taiwanese. I often overpronounce my Chinese slightly in my videos for the sake of clarity, typically sounding out the tones very precisely rather than blending them together as you would in conversation for the benefit of people with hearing challenges. Question 12. Can you tell me about your Christian beliefs? Answer. I'm a Unitarian in the Socinian tradition of the Radical Reformation and part of the historic Christian peace tradition. Consequently, my beliefs are highly unorthodox. I don't believe Jesus is God, and I don't believe in the immortal soul, so I don't accept the doctrine of the Trinity, and I don't believe people are transferred to a conscious heaven or hell when they die. I also reject the idea of supernatural evil, so I don't believe in a supernatural Satan or devil, or in evil spirits, demons, or fallen angels. For more information on my beliefs, you can visit my secondary channel, Radical Reformation Christianity. See the link in the video description. Question 13. Will you ever have merch or accept sponsorship? Answer. My answer to both of those questions is it depends. I really don't feel comfortable with the vast majority of corporate sponsorship on YouTube, and there's no way I'm selling merch which is the product of exploiting someone else's labor. If I can find ethical merchandise or sponsorship which is a good fit for my channel and its principles, then I'll let you know. And if you find any, then you can let me know as well. I would prefer to sell my own work, but I'm not sure that I have much to sell. My skills are mainly in information management, technical writing, and teaching, though I do have some skill with photography. Maybe I'll find a photography service which could print and distribute my work. Future plans. Now that I have something of an audience, I would like to use my platform to help others, boosting their own signal without them having to do all of the same hard work I've had to go through. I'm not exactly sure yet how to go about this, but I have some ideas and would welcome your suggestions. Firstly, if you already have a leftist video on your own channel which you would like to see promoted more, then you can send me a link to it and I'll promote it with an announcement and place it in a special playlist on my channel. Videos will be accepted on a case-by-case basis. Secondly, I'm offering to read scripts and make videos based on other people's content to help them get their material online without all the cost and time investment required to start their own channel. Again, the material must be leftist and will be accepted on a case-by-case basis. Members of my Discord server can send me a script they've written and I'll turn it into a basic video with their guidance, up to 15 minutes long, and upload it to my channel in a special playlist. Members of my Patreon will be able to submit longer scripts and receive a higher level of editing service. However, even if you're not a patron of mine, if you have an idea for a similar form of collaboration, such as me making a video from an audio file of a narration you've already produced, please get in touch with me through my channel's email address, or simply join my Discord server and contact me that way. Thanks again to everyone who has supported this channel. See the video description for instructions on how to join my Discord server, where you can preview videos several days before release and provide suggestions and feedback on current and future content. Thank you all again. Finally, many thanks to my generous patrons: Elias Asvig, Duran Barnett, Alexander Curzon, Sean A. Young, Andy Chaos, TBLTP, Thors, Niels Rethlin, Judge Sabo, Matthew Simmerall, Thomas Leonard, Martin T., Ben Lindquist, John Larkin, Jack C., Ezekiel Stacey, Love You More, Noah French, Aaron Johnson, and Dusty Bob. Thank you so much for your support, and please contact me if I ever pronounce your name incorrectly.